Hello everyone! So this time we're going to be reacting to Jen's NSDC video. So Jen, would you mind telling us a little bit about this video, this round, and anything you want to share?
Awesome. Thanks, Laura. So this was the semifinal round of NSDC 2020. The motion was this House would mandate individuals to be cremated upon their death. I completely did not expect this kind of motion to come up here because, like, you can't even classify it into a heading. Like, we were completely unprepared, and we fought against an amazing team, which was Banten at that time. We were the proposition side, and Banten was the opposition side of the House on this motion. Yeah, let's jump into the debate.
I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. The entire leader of opposition speech basically said that they want to uphold culture and they want to uphold closure, right? But it's opposition's burden, if they want to uphold that, to make sure that it's going to be accessible for everyone. Because this is the way that the government actually works, right? You uphold equality whenever it is possible. That's why you make education free whenever it's possible, because it equalizes people's opportunities. That's why you make healthcare free and vaccines free whenever it's possible, because we think it's a human right. We think that people's rights to actually control how people are remembered at their death is also a human right, because death is something that everybody will eventually face, and everybody should be able to remember their families equally. Okay, why in opposition side you cannot uphold that equality? 4 reasons, and these are my responses. Inaccessible to the poor, right? Them saying that they want to decorate the coffin and whatnot is going to be inaccessible to the poor. So that means it's likely that the poor will never even reach closure, right? And we think that the respect to your family should never be measured by how much money you actually spend when they are dead, right? We think that at this point they actually don't need any more. Like, these dead people should actually just be wishing the best for their family and for their family to be able to move on with their death, right? In our side, you get that because you respect these people just by following their morals, just by continuing your father's legacy, for example. We think that this is going to be more accessible for everyone because everyone can actually define it by themselves, like by what their family is asking for them. Like, if your family is poor, for example, your dad won't expect you to become a billionaire afterwards, right? But if you're poor and you have a richer relative, for example, then it's likely that in the opposition side, that rich relative will still pressure you to give a funeral that's as good as possible, right? Because death should be sacred whenever it is possible. We think that this is ridiculous. Second response, the state itself cannot guarantee this equality, right? Because even though you actually already have a graveyard, already respected your family, if you're not rich enough, hospitals are built on graveyards all the time, and this is what government is actually doing, right? You cannot defend your graveyard just because you're poor. We think that this is something that's unjustified because you could not even choose to be born poor or rich, right? In government, you full on just use that money for funerals to give people better healthcare, or to just, you don't need to build funerals, you just build hospitals so that people's deaths are actually not that regrettable, right? So that we have better healthcare, so people actually have closure upon their families' deaths. Third response, why it's going to be inaccessible again, right? Okay. We think that not everyone can access even religious rituals in burial, right? Who are these people? We think that these are soldiers who are dying in war, right? There is never time for them to actually conduct a proper burial, to actually make a coffin. It's likely just going to be either mass burials, or in our side, they can actually be sent to the nearest cremation center, right? Which is going to be made accessible by the government. But it's going to be, because cremation is fast, it's going to be possible, and they're still going to be honored equally with everyone else, right? In their side, even though these soldiers are no less honorable than anyone, they don't get the burial that they deserve. We think this is unjustified. Fourth response, even when the cheaper option is possible, we think that people do not have the freedom to opt into the cheaper, right? I'll explain later in my extension. Before my extension, is there any POI?
All right, so I guess we'll stop it there since that's like sort of the end of the 4 reasons and like rebuttal. So let's start with the thoughts, the vibes. Aurel, what do you think? And then Jen.
Yeah. I
Okay.
think like as an opening, that was very solid. One, I think, were you a second speaker, right, Jen?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So I think I really like the burden push that you did at the beginning. I think that was really strong, just sort of telling like, yes, the opposition entered the round and they wanted this, but in order to do that, they would have to prove this. I also really like the structure, especially I think in your initial responses, you focus primarily on like their main premise and then further give like four responses to that. And then the others, I'm assuming is going to be integrated in the speech, but I think I really like that opening. It's like very, I think that's a very good example of what a good speech opening should and could be. What do you think, Dazzle?
No, let's go to Jen first. What is your impression of you 3 years ago?
Okay, first of all, wow, my accent was so much stronger, I think. Okay, that's unrelated to the debate though. But also, I feel like in this debate, what I did was I made a huge bet on winning the debate based on controlling how deaf, how people grieve, sort of. Um, and like you can see here that I was trying really hard to try to win that because I even went to to like talk about soldiers in war,
Yeah.
and how we should care about them, which I think shouldn't be done, by the way. Like you don't need to go that far. Um, yeah, like the principal argument idea itself, I would still run if I was in the debate because I found that to be like, wow, like you could run that principle and like that sounds very I don't know, it just like really hit. But what can be done definitely is to add more positive material on something that I actually kind of touched on there, which is like hospitals being built, and that's probably what you should focus on. Like if we expanded on that point a lot more, then that would have given us a better chance in this debate.
Yeah. Totally agree with everyone. Because I guess also that this House rate motion, so taking it from the perspective of the government, there are also a lot of other arguments about just like pragmatically. But regardless of like how the strategy of the round went, what I really like and what I think Jen does really well for all speeches, um, just like in general, I think is also to have really grounded examples. Like whether or not the grounded examples were for the right argument is like separate, like whether you wanted to run that. But I think just in general, being able to characterize in very detail, what the processes are like, giving very concrete examples of like what exactly grief looks like or how exactly this is inaccessible. That is really good to make like whatever point you're making much stronger and sound a lot more plausible than if you were just to assert it. So this I think applies not only for responsive speakers, but definitely for first speakers as well. Because unfortunately, we don't have like a first speaker video to watch. But I think this is also material you could use as first speaker to really focus on grounding your argument in a way that intuitively makes sense, or at least like can be accepted by the judge. So yeah,
Maybe that was why.
that was why.
Maybe that was why I was to second and pushed to first in like
maybe, yeah. I don't know. I really like grounding examples because what a lot of debaters do, I think, especially in NSDC, now that I'm looking at like sort of like the trends of what's going on, is like people do make arguments, but sometimes the arguments are sort of like floating in the air. It's not tied to any real world basis. So that's I guess something to keep in mind. All right, we shall move on to the POI/extension. POI opsoy.
Okay. Seems like there's no POI. I think that it's unjustified if you are more if just because you're more privileged, you deserve more honor and you deserve more closure in your family in heaven, right? So my extension is going to talk about why opposition side will perpetuate an unhealthy competition in pursuing that more honor in heaven, right? We think that opposition will just try to signify your superiority over someone else's, even
Oh, actually, I do remember this where you like froze the entire one, and then this is like another case where you had to turn
the
off
government
cam.
can tax the rich more.
If you are richer, then you're more honored. So
Oh,
that's the last part that I heard.
What's the time?
I already stopped it at 4:12.
I'm sorry.
So I have like 4
R.
minutes and a few more seconds. I'll get notified if it's 8 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Also on the 7th.
Okay.
Panic.
I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. We think it's absolutely atrocious to say that you deserve more honor just because you are more privileged, that you deserve a better closure and a better home in heaven just because you're privileged. So my extension is going to talk about how opposition side perpetuates that unhealthy competition to get that closure or to get that honor, right? In opposition, you'll try to signify your superiority over someone else's, even until death. But let's go back to the government, to characterizing the government. We think that government still allows some part of inequality in like economy or other areas. It's because it can be mitigated, right? Because if you work hard in your studies, then you can get into a good college and get a good job. If you rise up in your job because you're more hardworking, then you can actually surpass the people who are above you, right? The government will happily tax the rich more and like give the poor a chance to climb the economic ladder, right? But death should be something that's equal, because after death, there is no other option to mitigate like how respectable your family is going to be, right? In their side, when you have graveyards, in the afterlife, you finalize the message that I am still more privileged than you, that I'm still more than you, even though you are already dead, right? We think that this is toxic because of 2 reasons. Firstly, we think that there are already many people in the status quo who humiliate people who cannot afford good funerals. These are grandmothers in funerals secretly gossiping like this funeral isn't luxurious enough, although the family of the dead ones are already grieving, right? This backlashes what opposition wants, which is respect for the dead anyway, right? You cannot guarantee that. Secondly, old people are also likely to pressure their children to get a lot of money to make a good funeral for their arrogance and for their insecurity in society, right? My funeral has to be better than your previous, than your sister's parent, for example, or your cousin's parent, right? Even though that money could have been used for the child's education or self-improvement, which is actually just going to better like teach them good values in their life actually, and make them able to actually have closure after the death, because they can actually have a proper life, right? We think that when you cannot fulfill that in the opposition side, it's as if that your family in heaven is not going to be ever happy and you will never reach that closure. We think this is harmful, right? Even if you can like upgrade the grave or change that, we think that this is going to be unnecessary competition, right? It's going to look very bad in the opposition side, because if you go to a graveyard, for example, right, you're going to like walk around and you're going to compare how much this family respected their parents, how much this family respected their grandparents, right? Although everybody actually had different life conditions, and not everybody can actually can actually afford a good funeral, right? Maybe because of their money, or maybe because they didn't have the time, maybe they were working abroad, right? We think that the assumption that everyone can actually access good funerals is going to be harmful to the family's perception, which is unjust because they couldn't choose to have the better funeral. We think this is toxic because actually no life is over any other life, right? Even though you are like you achieved more than someone else in life, it's probably because of luck, right? It's probably because you were lucky that you had a good education, because you were rich, right? We think that no life should be upheld over. We think that no life should be upheld over any other life, right? That's why in our side we uphold the principle that everyone should have the same amount of respect paid to them after their death. Vote for government.
And vote for
All right.
government we
Thank you to the
shall. Okay. I guess, okay, since I was already out of the speech, final thoughts on the extension bit, as well as just like the speech as a whole. Let's start with Jen. How was it like seeing yourself?
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
First of all, I feel like this extension was better presented in the reply speech, where I said, if you didn't get equality in life, you should at least get equality in death. I wish I thought of that line.
Banger line.
Yeah.
What a banger.
See, so I just wish I thought of that in the extension. But second of all, like again, I feel like this was still like me making that huge bet and just like running with it. But I think the takeaway here, other than like, well, don't make bets that you can't win. Ha 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 ha. I'm kidding. Like the takeaway here is like, if you're making a bet, then like just bet on it hard, you know? And don't sound like unconfident, or don't sound like you kind of already know that might not win over the other team. Because I feel like even though at that time I was like very, very sure that this was going to be hard, like to win this clash, I still delivered it with you know, the confidence that I can muster up at that moment. So yeah, definitely sound like you're winning, and you might sway some people, because I think in this debate, some people still voted for my team, even though Bantan ended up winning the debate.
Mhm. That's really important, actually. I guess that's also just a broader comment on manner, which is again a metric that's actually being judged for NSDC far more explicitly. So yeah, make sure you also have your manner in check, guys. Especially with in person, I think it's going to be far more important to be able to project and sound confident, because even little things like this can affect the quality and just like how people perceive your speech. Aurel, what do you think of
Yeah, I
this
have
speech?
like I agree with everyone so far. I think especially since we're moving back to offline, I think manner is going to be extremely important. And just overall, I think confidence can do a lot for speech, not just in terms of you sounding more confident, but if you can actually gaslight yourself into being confident, then I think it could actually encourage you to take an extra step to just be more courageous in supporting your arguments and prevent the speech or the argument to be to sound more repetitive, just like the same thing over and over again, just maybe slightly worded a bit different. I think that confidence can go a long way, and it could actually make you explore and dip your feet into a lot of different layers and scenarios, just give you an extra strength of bravery. So the takeaway would be just that, just gaslight yourself. Gaslighting goes a
Yes.
long way.
Gaslight
Only to date.
yourself. You
Don't
still need
Yeah,
quote
the
me on
meds
that.
though.
and gaslight your teammates as well.
Oh, important, very important.
Very, very out there.
Oh, wow.
Jen, as a very special person for last year's NSDC in particular. Yeah, I think last year or 2 years ago. Last
And
year,
am I
last year.
there?
Last year.
Last year, yeah.
As a important person to NSDC and the ecosystem of the Indonesian high school debate circuit ecosystem thing. Do you have any?
Yeah, as the decomposers and the parasites of NSDC ecosystem. Okay. Yeah. My message for people joining NSDC this year offline, I guess like the like debate tip kind of message would be ready to reinvent yourselves, because this is something that you had like very, very little like time to prepare, unfortunately, this year. And I think like in general, in a competition setting, there's going to be a lot of things that you don't expect coming from other people and also yourself. Because personally in NSDC, I was like, you know, I was having like the kinds of nervousness that I've never experienced before. And I feel like that was a unique experience that I totally didn't expect going into it. And I'm just saying, like, it's normal for that to happen. And don't be afraid to reach out, and don't be afraid to, you know, not go so harsh on yourself, but instead, like, just be prepared that there's going to be unexpected things. And yeah, just like reinvent yourself with what you can do in that moment. That's kind of like the technical tip. The other thing is like definitely what Aura has already said in her video as well. Make friends, because I feel like the friends that I made in NSDC, a lot of them I still keep in touch with up till now. Because I feel like debaters are just like really, really fun people who you can talk to about almost anything. So yeah, especially since it's going to be an offline experience, like make sure to get all of that, you know, bonding experience that can't be done as strongly online, I feel. Yeah, so that's that. And make sure to watch all of the videos because I think this conveniently teaches you content, style, and structure. I feel like Ara's video has really, really good content. My video probably would focus on style because of the lack of content. And Dazzle's video, I think, is really, really strong on strategy because of like all the very, very iconic phrases that he uses to trap his opponents.
All right, so I guess that's the end of this particular video. Hope it was helpful for everyone, and see you in the next one.
Which is-
Yay.